This is The Guide Gals, a modern wedding-focused podcast by the experts at Here Comes the Guide. I'm Chelsea, a designer and inspired creative who's probably racked up over 2,500 hours on Pinterest and the friend who's going to shoot it to you straight.
And I'm Caroline, a social media manager who is obsessed with dogs as ring bearers and will inevitably cry over your wedding video. We've seen it from all sides. We've been brides, planners, bridesmaids, and have worked with standout brands throughout the industry.
Think of us as an extension of your wedding party and hang out with us as we share the ins, outs, ups, and downs of the road to I Do.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. It's just me, Caroline, today. Last week you heard from Chelsea all about different tips from our friend Emily who sent those in. So it was such a good episode and I'm excited to be the one chatting with you today. There are kind of two different reasons why we're doing these solo episodes. One is because Chelsea is away this week. Chelsea is in Chicago visiting wedding venues, which is such a fun part of our job at Here Comes the Guide that you don't always get to hear about, but we do get to go visit some of the wedding venues in different areas, which is such a unique part of our job. So she's having fun there, left me here in Pennsylvania. But another reason is also because we are just coming out of engagement season. In case you don't know, engagement season in the wedding industry typically runs from like December through January, takes a little pause, and then ramps up again around Valentine's Day. It's typically a pretty busy time for us, so it's nice to have a little bit of a slower session, chat about some specific topics, and then we'll jump back into the regular swing of things. Because it's been a busy season, that also means that these solo episodes are going to be audio only. In case you don't know, we also have a YouTube channel. So if you watch us there, you know. But if you don't, we do have a YouTube channel where you can see our faces as we talk on all of our subjects on a weekly basis. Obviously, except for last week and this week, but it is the Here Comes the Guide YouTube channel, which is where we work, and that hosts our Guide Gals podcast channel. All right, well, if you clicked on today's episode, you kind of already know what we're going to talk about. But to explain it a little bit further, we're going to talk about elopements, redo weddings from 2020, and any other unique celebrations, which does sound like a wide variety of things. All of this, though, stems from one question that we got regarding circumstances that require a later date for a wedding reception or celebration. That could be from the pandemic or for other reasons, so there's a lot to unpack here, so let's jump in. In all of this, I think it's important for us to define some of the terms for today. So things like elopement, that could mean different things to different people. A lot of times when we think elopement, you could think just two people who are going to Vegas and have a witness and that's it. But it also could include having 15 of your closest friends and heading up to Acadia National Park, which honestly sounds like a dream to me. That's also the same for small weddings. There's a lot of different numbers you see out there that define small weddings. Typically, we see these as under 50 people. For some people, it's under 25. For some people, it's under 10. So just know that when I talk about some of these things, there is a little bit of a range that we're looking at here, but all of these are considered small or unique. One thing we'll also definitely be diving into, because it stems from the question that we were asked, are what should we do about those weddings that happened in 2020 that didn't really go the way that we wanted them to. That includes myself, which I've talked about on other episodes, but we're also trying to find the right term for that. So those are just some of the definitions I wanted to walk through when we talk about elopements, when we talk about these later celebrations, things like that. And also we're going to dive into, do we even have them? Should you even do a later celebration? Is it worth it? And so before I even jump into that, I really want to stress right here that no matter how you end up celebrating your wedding, the key thing in all of this is to do what's best for you. Seriously, hear me when I say this. Never make any decisions based off of what other people want from you or what you feel like you should do. And you'll hear me reiterate that later in the episode. But so here's the question that we were sent. I had a super small wedding back in 2019. Very little planning went into it, and honestly, it wasn't very special. We figured we would plan a bigger wedding later, but here we are in 2024 and we haven't done it. We don't have the funds for a larger scale wedding, but I really want wedding pictures. My idea is to buy or rent a dress/tux and exchange vows somewhere pretty and pay for a photographer so that we have wedding photos that are more elopement style. But we did tell our family that we would do a bigger wedding at some point. Would it be super rude to just do our own thing again, or should we try to at least put a reception together? For added context, no one in our family has asked when we are doing our big wedding. I think they assume we have our hands full with our kids. what would you do? So this really touches on a lot of the things that we kind of defined at the beginning of the episode, and it's very similar to the position that I find myself in, and so that's why I was so excited to tackle this. I think at the very least, definitely spending some time, money, energy, figuring out a bridal shoot or some sort of wedding shoot for you and your husband is so, so important. Having those wedding pictures, I think, are a big deal. It's such a physical reminder of your wedding vows, your wedding day, your marriage. It's so special to share with others, and I think that would be something you would really treasure for years to come. So I think that's a no-brainer. I really do think that if you don't have wedding photos, that's a great thing to invest in and spend some time. But then we think about the familial aspect, your family in there as well. While you don't owe them anything, I totally understand the feeling of wanting to include them on a celebration, but that is a lot of time and effort. I feel like there is a good middle ground to have here. And even if you don't do a big reception, I really feel like it could be fun to make a day out of getting ready for your wedding pictures, getting all dressed up, and capturing these moments together, and then maybe having a small sort of reception afterwards, after that big photo shoot. So you can still have that be private to you, but then have some sort of celebration with friends and family later. I don't think this needs to be a big thing where you send out invitations or have to book a bunch of vendors. I really feel like it could be as simple as booking out your favorite restaurant or something along those lines and inviting your special people and just really making the day about you and your marriage. I guess that's what I would do in that context, but I've also thought about other things. So for my situation, similarly to this question, is got married in 2020. We had about 25 people at our wedding, and there were a lot of people there that we were so glad to have there, and there were a lot of people who couldn't be there because of the restrictions. And that has always been something that's been a little bit sad to me, especially like my grandma couldn't be there because she lived in a nursing home and they were not allowed to leave, and no one was really allowed to come just for their own safety, which I think was really smart. I was able to have her there in a virtual aspect, but there's just something so different about it. So I've really wanted to have something like this. And one of the things I've thought about is for our 10-year anniversary or something like that, paying for everybody to go on a vacation, especially like friends and close family if they're able to. And the thing that I feel like I missed out on was that quality time. I'm a quality time person. I love being with people. I'm very extroverted. So that was something that I felt like I missed out on, and I would love to be able to spoil my family and have them come out on a little vacation, which would be time for them, but then also time to celebrate my husband and I and the vows that we made to each other that not everyone was there to see. So that is kind of a pipe dream for me. I don't know if I'll be able to afford that or pull that off, but it's kind of something that I've thought about a little bit. So one other thing that I think will be really special about that is we do plan to have a family. We plan to have kids. And one thing that I think would be really nice is that our kids will get to be there and be part of the celebration. I don't know. I think it would be really special for them to see us celebrating our marriage and for them to be a part of it. And I don't know. I just think it'd be really special. Regardless of what you decide, I really think doing what's best for you, which sounds like taking that time to get those photos taken, spend some quality time, possibly get your family involved. But if you don't, I really think it's okay. I don't think they'll think it's rude. It's truly what is best for you. And at the end of the day, it's not about them. It's about you and your family. Going through just a couple of other thoughts and questions that came up that were either submitted to them or things that I've thought about are vow renewal venues. You may find that some venues have experienced this or have special packages for this. I think it would be really cool to figure that out. And that also reminds me of this idea of pop-up weddings that's been very interesting. I don't think I would necessarily do a pop-up wedding, but the idea of one is that there is kind of this quick turnaround where you go, you set up quickly, you have your celebration, you tear it down, pack it up, leave, and then someone else comes in. So you have a short time slot, but you can kind of do things rapidly, quickly, have a shorter rental, and it's definitely more cost effective. I think it could be interesting for people who want to do these later celebrations. And let us know if you have further questions about pop-up weddings. We'd be happy to answer them. Okay, the next question, is destination a good idea? Now, this is something that might be interesting, like destination weddings could be a good idea for these because it does weed out a higher guest count and it ends up with people who really want to celebrate you. Like it's really going to weed out the people who are just in it because, you get some free food, some dancing. I'm not saying that's always the case, but the people who do make it for destination weddings are putting in a good amount of effort and really do want to be there to celebrate you. They're going to make it work. And you get a good vacation or some good time out of it. I would probably try and as much as possible to spend more of our budget around helping people get there instead of doing like a big venue or other higher costs, but it is still a higher cost option, so you'll definitely want to weigh that out. Okay, how to handle invitations. That's something that I think is a very interesting part of this. Is it more low-key than a wedding in this way? Can you save money by skipping the formal details? I really do think yes. I think with this, you have a little bit more leeway. People aren't going to expect anything big and drastic. The only caveat I would make to that is if you choose to go the destination route, you kind of do need to be cognizant of the time frame and people's planning. So I would still send out invitations if you're doing a destination style later celebration. But if not, I think you can be kind of a little bit more casual with your invitations. Another question is, are there reception only packages? Like I talked about before, some people only were able to have ceremonies and were not able to have receptions. And so you might be looking for something to just host a nice dinner party at a nice venue to celebrate and then skip the ceremony stuff. I think this is a great option, and I really do think you should ask some venues about this. And there definitely are venues out there that do reception-only packages. This also might be a good place to look into restaurants or other options that you may not look into for a traditional wedding celebration, but you might be able to swing it for this later celebration. I keep calling it later celebration. I don't know if that's actually the term I want to land on, but just that's where I've landed so far. Which is kind of the next question we were asked. Is there a name for this type of event besides vow renewal? And the reason we hesitate to call them vow renewals is because sometimes there is some superstition around vow renewals that they're actually kind of detrimental in a way. I see that as superstition, but other people have, I think, more experience with feeling that way. But as I was saying, with later celebration, that's just kind of the word I've landed on. What would you call it? Please let us know what you would call this. I still have no idea. Vow renewal doesn't sound right because I feel like vow renewal is more indicative of renewing the ceremony part, like redoing the ceremony and the vows. But you may not actually just be doing that. You might just be doing a reception where you're celebrating. I don't know. There's a lot of different details that you can keep or subtract. So I think vow renewal isn't the right term. I'm still calling it later celebration. I don't know. Lastly, how would you handle telling family you aren't doing a big wedding after all? I really think we're in the clear with this because my family hasn't asked. It doesn't sound like the person who's asking, their family hasn't really asked them. I do think there's a lot of understanding for things that went on in the change of plans, and ultimately, it's about you. It's not about what they want. It's about you. And if they try to make it about what they want, well, then maybe even more reason not to do a celebration like that. If they remember or even ask, I think it would be a simple conversation to say, we really thought so, we wanted to, but now our priorities are a little bit different. And we've just decided that that's not for us right now. Because it's not about them, it's about what's best for you. And I cannot keep saying that enough. Truly, through any sort of wedding planning process, it's about you. It's not about expectations from anybody else. But I'm also a huge fan of clear communication, and so I think that is also a great way to go about it, just to be very clear, very upfront, keep the details really small so that if they do have pushback, you can say, well, cool. Maybe you wouldn't say it like that. All right, I think that's everything that I have for today. Just talking briefly about elopements, later celebrations, and other unique festivities. If you have further questions about this, please let us know. I'm still weighing a lot of this, and I'm sorry I didn't give clear-cut instructions because I do think there's a lot of leeway in this, and it does depend on the couple, on the family, and just how you're feeling. If you're still dead set on a celebration and you want to do a full-on wedding, do it. If you want to do a destination style, do it. If you've decided against doing a later celebration or anything at all, totally fine. Your day should represent what you and your partner want ultimately, and that should be the priority. If you have any questions about today's episode, please let us know. You can go to our website, theguidegalspodcast.com, and fill out one of our forms to ask about pop-up weddings, to ask about Okay, but what about this detail with a small wedding or elopement? We'd love to answer those there. You can also head over to our socials at the Guide Gals Podcast on Instagram and at the Guide Gals Pod on TikTok. Leave us some questions in the comments, in the DMs, wherever you want, and just let us know what you're thinking about this episode or any of the others. And while you're there, give us a follow. Also, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. It is the Here Comes the Guide channel that hosts the Guide Gals podcast, so you can watch us there. And as always, you can find our podcast wherever you get yours. Thank you so much for listening. It's such a huge support of our podcast, and we love chatting with you guys every week. Share this episode with anyone you think would enjoy it. And until next time, cheers!